Hi, folks. Welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch another lovely day in the Ozarks. A little breezy, not yet, but it's supposed to be. I don't know that we're going to get back to the harsh winds, but yesterday it got pretty windy, and as most of you know, it's been crazy windy this year. It just keeps going and going. But anyways, so a little bit more on this, tariffs and markets and all that kind of stuff. And I do have a good point to this, so stick with me. I know that you're like, oh my goodness, we're talking about this again. There's something, a little sliver of something that's been kind of confirmed through all this. So there's been a lot of speculation that the 90-day pause on tariffs, which caused the stock market to just soar yesterday, that part of the decision or all of the decision to do that was because the bond market was not handling it well at all. Now, the official story and the story that's been kind of pushed by a lot of, the same people that got those fancy little Epstein list folders that there was really nothing in, those kind of people. They've been pushing that this is part of the, the master plan, the art of the deal, the 4D, 5D chess thing. But there's other experts that are looking at it and says that they think that the 90-day pause was really a reaction. It wasn't part of the plan. It was a reaction to what was going on with everything, all the chaos that was happening because of all the tariffs. This morning, the White House economic advisor did kind of confirm that. He said that the reaction in the bond market played a big part into the decision to do the 90-day pause. Now, here's where I'm going with this. The reason for that is because people around the world, and especially certain nations, were dumping U.S. bonds. And if you don't quite understand, that's debt. When you hear about, China or some other country owning a bunch of U.S. debt, that's what it is. It's bonds. Bonds is our debt. We're buying that debt so that the United States can keep going into more debt, but they'll give you an interest rate. You'll get a little bit of interest. You'll make a little bit of money. And the more confidence that there is in the United States, in the U.S. dollar, the more people will buy that debt, meaning that the higher the confidence, the more debt that this country can go into. And I might add that we're getting ready to go into a lot because the budget was passed, and it's like an additional $5.8 trillion. We're going to be going into debt at a rate at least $1 trillion every 100 days. So we didn't reduce the debt. Okay, we're going into more debt. But anyways, so as you all know, I was saying for the last few days that China was dumping a lot of U.S. debt. They are a large holder, not the biggest, but they are the second biggest holder of U.S. debt. And so they were dumping U.S. debt. And that's not too surprising because there's a little trade war between us and China. But here's the big one. Come to find out, Japan was dumping massive amounts of U.S. debt, U.S. bonds. Japan is an ally, and this whole tariff thing was unlikely to affect them greatly because they almost immediately wanted to talk about some type of trade deal. So the tariffs may not have affected them too much, and they're an ally. Why were they dumping U.S. debt? It wasn't to punish us. It was because they started losing confidence. Not just them, but they started to see that the world was losing confidence in the U.S. dollar. Now, I don't think it was just because of that moment. I think that the U.S. dollar is just barely the one that's the top dog. That the confidence has waned so much in the U.S. dollar that even with something like this, while it seems big, it was just a little blip, caused everyone to start to lose confidence. And so the point that I'm trying to make with this is that the confidence in the U.S. dollar isn't there. I mean, it's there just barely enough to make it the top dog, and it's almost like it's just there enough because there's not really any other alternative. If there was a real viable, real alternative, would there still continue to be confidence in the US dollar, making it the global reserve currency? I don't know. And that's what China's trying to find out, because they want their currency or the BRICS dollar to be the top dog. And this is very serious, because I've talked at this before. If our currency loses global reserve status, and countries like Japan and China and others start dumping US bonds, it will not only make things, I mean, if our currency just lost global reserve status, that alone would be bad. It would cause the prices of things for us here in the United States to go up significantly. But if they start dumping US bonds, if they start dumping our debt, it'll cause our currency to go into a tailspin. And that's exactly what was happening. And it was happening quickly. And so a lot of White House sources, Fox News was talking about it this morning, that they had to very quickly turn this around, because the momentum to dump U.S. bonds seemed to be so great that they felt that it could cause our currency to go into a tailspin. That's how fragile it is, folks. It's how fragile things are. And we sit back and we talk about the possibility of these things, but I don't know that anyone really fully grasps it or really understands how imminent something like that is. And what it would mean. What it would mean if our dollar completely lost value. A few years ago, in kind of the conspiracy and prepper world and patriot world and stuff like that, there was a lot of talk about Venezuela, because Venezuelan currency went hyperinflated and it was completely worthless. There's been documentaries and TV shows made on it, and this wasn't that long ago, so it was one that we could real time kind of watch, and it was absolutely devastating. Lots of people lost their lives, lots of violence. It was horrible. Something like that could potentially happen to the United States. Now, I honestly don't believe that it would get that bad, because they would turn around and implement a digital currency. We would just switch teams, switch over to digital currency and push that. There would definitely be a bad time. I don't know that it would be quite as bad as Venezuela, but it could. Or Germany during the Weimar Republic. It could be that bad. But the point is that our currency is not very stable. Our dollar, we're in immense amount of debt. We're at $36 trillion. We'll probably be somewhere close to 40 trillion, if not over 40 trillion, probably by the end of this year, if not into next year. I mean, the amount of debt that we're going in is absolutely astronomical. And whether or not you hated Biden's policies, Trump's policies, loved them, hated them, it doesn't matter. The fact is, on a global stage, these policies are disruptive. And as much as some of us may enjoy the idea of being isolationist, nationalist, whatever, the fact is that we live in a global world, whether you like it or not. And it's been that way for a long time. And you're not just going to pull out of that and walk away and everything be okay. And they know that. Everybody knows that. That's kind of in power. And so as much as the United States does wield a lot of power because of military and currency and production and GDP and all that, it's still part of a global community, whether you like it or not. And when the global community turns its back on our currency because our debt's going up, or because, whatever, it could be the end of a lot of things. And I think right now what we're seeing, and I know a lot of you like this, and I'm not saying it's I don't like it. I'm just it just is what it is, folks. What's being done right now is pushing or forcing a lot of countries to align with us in trade, in currency, military, whatever, but it's being done as a bully. I mean, it's bully tactics. Was it just yesterday the White House stated that something to the effect that, if you fall in line and you drop your tariffs, you won't be punished. That wasn't the exact words, but that was pretty much the gist of it. So right now, this bullying tactic is being used because not really anyone has called their bluff. Is it a bluff? Is it real? Who knows? It's possible that China will test that. It's possible that Iran will test that. It's not going to be little countries like Japan or Zimbabwe. They don't have the military might or the economic might to take us on. But China, Russia, and Iran, and North Korea, and they might combine, certainly. And so what it shows is the vulnerability and the weakness of our system. And I believe the fact that they're trying to push us into this type of collapse. Now this yesterday, the last couple of days, maybe it happened too quickly. We can't go quite yet. So let's back off a little bit. It's only a 90-day pause. Apparently in 90 days, some of it's going to happen again. But here's the thing. This is what's kind of crazy. This shows how the markets and the people in the markets, it's all knee-jerk reaction. That's all it is. It's all knee-jerk reaction. So Trump makes this announcement that there's this 90-day pause, and it sounds amazing. Of course, that causes stocks. Actually, let's pause for a moment. There's now people looking into the data that the stock market started spiking just minutes before the White House made the 90-day pause announcement. So it's starting to look like that information was given to certain people. I don't know. And they went in and started buying. But whatever. The push for that was because of a 90-day pause. But the reality is that the 90-day pause only affects smaller countries. It's not, they announced yesterday, it's not affecting China, Mexico, and Canada. It's not affecting the auto tariffs. It's not affecting the steel and the aluminum tariffs, which are all the big ones. That's the big stuff. It is affecting, the 90-day pause is on other countries. And yet still the markets reacted that way. This isn't over. Maybe the trade war was put on pause, but not really. This boils down to between us and China. And the rest of the world will fall in line with one of the two. And that's what this is. The only one that I could even begin to think that might be outside of that could be Russia, but yet Russia is aligned with China. They've already made commitments, and they've signed trade agreements, and they've signed all kinds of treaties between the two of them. So they are aligned with China. And that's the battle that we're watching. And we have to be prepared for it, because as this increases, I think China, they probably on looking at it from their perspective, they sit there thinking, their currency isn't as strong as they all think. It is vulnerable. And so that's a big deal. And if our currency hyperinflates, if our currency loses value, if they start dumping debt, if it stops being the global reserve currency, all those things, any one of those things could be very detrimental to here in the United States. That's why we have to get ready, because we're not just looking at a conventional war, World War III. We're not just looking at possible diseases and famines and violence and stuff. We're also looking at economic things. And we have to be prepared for that also. You need to be getting out of debt as much as possible. You need to be, owning hard assets. Like, to me, investments in metal is gold, silver, brass, that kind of stuff. You need to be living in a place that you can survive. If you're sitting on all kinds of gold and silver, or, even bullets and buckets of food, but you're in a townhouse apartment in St. Louis or something like that, or Chicago or LA, my opinion is you've made the wrong choice. I would rather have almost no ammunition and food and that sort of stuff, but live out like this to where I can at least survive. hard decisions need to be made for some of you, but you need to make them quickly, because all this stuff that's happening, like I said yesterday, it may not be ending today. We may not be seeing the end of all this, the culmination of all of this in the next days, weeks, months, or even in the next couple of years. But it is happening. And there's clear evidence that all of these things are pushing us further down the road to a particular point. And when we get there, it's going to be devastating. It's going to be bad. And you need to start making plans today. You need to start getting ready. I don't care if you've been doing this for decades or if you just started yesterday. Everybody can get a little bit more prepared. And this economy stuff, this dollar stuff, this is huge. The markets, all that, I think it's just testing. We're testing the system. We're testing to see what the reaction to it. That's possibly what all this back and forth, on, off stuff has been with the tariffs and everything else. They're testing to see the reaction. And the reaction is that the US dollar is not doing so well. And so we need to be prepared for that, because the dollar goes, it's going to be bad. And also remember that, just a few weeks back, they were pushing this, we're going to audit the Fort Knox. We're going to count how much gold is there. Well, they stopped talking about that one awfully quick, right? I wonder why. Probably because there's no gold there. It was Germany. Just the other day, they're talking about repatriating their gold. Their gold is held in New York City. They don't want it there anymore. They want it back home because they're not confident that they could get to it if they ever needed it. The signs are all over the place, folks. It's just now it's on you to wake up and see them and read them and then prepare for them. It's not going to be a good time when all these things start coming together. Get your houses in order and prepare yourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next video.